I, Jessica Miller, 28 years old, never imagined my parents would disown me at a family dinner meant to celebrate my younger sister Amber's engagement. What should have been a joyous occasion turned into the night that changed my life forever. Before I share the rest of this story, let me know where you're watching from. Hit that like button and subscribe to join our community of real-life drama survivors. Trust me, you'll want to stick around to see how I turned this family betrayal into the greatest comeback story. I arrived at my childhood home that evening with a mix of excitement and nervousness. Things had been tense between me and my parents recently, but nothing that would have prepared me for what was about to happen. As I pulled into the circular driveway of the suburban mansion where I grew up, I noticed everyone's cars were already there. My sister Amber's bright red convertible, my brother Ryan's practical family SUV, and several others belonging to extended family. The moment I walked through the front door, I felt it. A chill that had nothing to do with the air conditioning. My mother Catherine, always the perfect hostess in her pearl necklace and tailored dress, greeted me with a stiff hug that barely made contact. My father Robert, CEO of our family's financial services company, merely nodded from across the foyer. "You're late," my mother said, though I was only 5 minutes past the invited time. Traffic was bad, I explained, though I knew that wasn't the real issue. There had been tension ever since I'd raised questions about some discrepancies I'd found in the company books 3 weeks ago. As the company's head accountant, it was literally my job to notice such things, but my concerns had been met with unusual resistance. The dining room was set up immaculately, as always. Crystal glasses caught the light from the chandelier, and the good china, only used for special occasions, was arranged perfectly on the antique mahogany table. My sister Amber sat at one end, her 4-carat diamond engagement ring catching the light every time she moved her hand, which was often. Her fiancé Jake, a good-looking investment banker with perfect teeth and a golf handicap to match, sat beside her looking uncomfortable. My older brother Ryan, 30, was already seated with his wife Sarah. They had been married for 5 years and had twin 3-year-old boys who, thankfully, were with a sitter tonight. Ryan barely met my eyes when I entered, immediately looking down at his water glass. "Jessica, we saved you a seat," my father said, pointing to a chair at the far end of the table, away from the rest of the family. That should have been my first clue. The first course was served in awkward silence, broken only by Amber's enthusiastic chatter about wedding venues and flower arrangements. Every time I tried to join the conversation, someone would talk over me or change the subject. After the main course had been served and the family-style dishes passed around, my father stood up, wine glass in hand. My heart lifted, thinking we were finally getting to the toasts and celebration part of the evening. "Before we celebrate Amber's future," he began, his voice carrying the same authoritative tone he used in board meetings, "we need to address the past." He turned to look directly at me, his eyes cold. "Jessica, after what we've discovered, we can no longer consider you family." The room went completely silent. I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach. Surely I had misheard. "What?" I managed to say, my voice barely above a whisper. My mother's voice cut through the silence, sharp as a knife. "Consider yourself a stranger from now on. We know what you've done. You need to leave immediately," my father continued. "And never return. You're no longer welcome in this house or at the company." I looked around the table in shock, searching for any ally. Amber had a small, satisfied smile playing at the corners of her mouth. Ryan wouldn't meet my eyes. Jake stared intently at his plate. "What are you talking about?" I finally managed to say, my voice shaking. "What have I supposedly done?" "Don't play innocent," my mother snapped. "We have proof of your betrayal. You're lucky we're not pressing charges." My mind raced. Betrayal? Charges? None of this made any sense. The financial discrepancies I'd found were in accounts I didn't even have access to. "You need to leave now," my father said, standing up and pointing toward the door. "Your things have already been packed." My hands began to tremble uncontrollably. I looked around the table one more time, memories flashing through my mind of countless family dinners in this very room. Birthday celebrations, holiday gatherings, Sunday roasts. All those years, and now I was being thrown out like garbage. Does anyone have anything to say? I asked, looking at each family member in turn. No one spoke. No one defended me. I stood up slowly, my legs feeling weak beneath me. So that's it? 28 years as a daughter, and you're just erasing me? You erased yourself when you betrayed this family, my father said coldly. As he escorted me to the door, his hand firmly on my elbow, my mother appeared with a small cardboard box. These are your personal items from your childhood room, she said, not meeting my eyes. The rest has been donated. At the last moment, my father pressed a manila envelope into my hands. The proof, he said quietly. So you know exactly why you're dead to us. Don't try to contact anyone in this family again. The door closed in my face. Just like that, I was standing on the porch of my childhood home, holding a box of memories and an envelope full of accusations, completely alone. I somehow made it to my car, tears blurring my vision. I drove aimlessly until I found myself at Franklin Park, where I used to play as a child. Pulling into a parking spot, I finally let the sobs take over. When the tears subsided enough for me to see clearly, I looked down at the manila envelope in my passenger seat. Whatever was inside had cost me my family. I had no idea what I was about to discover, but one thing was becoming clear through my shock and grief: they had no idea what they'd just set in motion. The rain started as a light drizzle, then quickly intensified, drumming against the roof of my car. It matched my mood perfectly as I sat in the empty parking lot, staring at the manila envelope. My hands trembled as I finally opened it, not knowing what proof my father thought he had against me. Inside were dozens of pages of financial records, ledgers, bank statements, and transaction reports, all from Miller Financial Services, our family company where I'd worked as head accountant for the past 4 years. Many of the pages had my signature on them, authorizing transfers of substantial sums to offshore accounts. Except, I had never signed these documents. The signatures were convincing forgeries. What the hell? I whispered, flipping through page after page of fabricated evidence. As I dug deeper into the envelope, I found a USB drive taped to the inside. I plugged it into my laptop with shaking hands, and what I found shattered any remaining illusion I had about my family. It contained audio recordings of family meetings I'd never been invited to. I clicked on the most recent one, dated just 3 days ago. Are we sure about this? It was Ryan's voice, hesitant and concerned. What choice do we have? My father sounded irritated. Jessica found the discrepancies. She's asking questions. It's only a matter of time before she figures it out. But to frame her? Dad, that's protecting the family, my mother interrupted. Amber made mistakes, but she's getting married. She has her whole life ahead of her. Jessica has always been difficult. Thanks, Mom, Amber's voice now, sarcastic and entitled as always. But Ryan's right, isn't this a bit extreme? I mean, I'll pay it back eventually. I felt sick as the truth dawned on me. The discrepancies I'd found in the company accounts, the ones I'd discreetly brought to my father's attention as a potential security breach, were Amber's doing. My sister had been embezzling from the company to fund her lavish lifestyle, and now that I'd discovered it, they were framing me to protect her. I listened to recording after recording, each more damning than the last. They had planned every detail: how they would forge documents with my signature, how they would stage the confrontation at a family dinner so I wouldn't make a scene, how they would cut me off completely to prevent me from defending myself. Ryan had been reluctant but ultimately went along with it. What about her career? Her reputation? We're destroying her life, he had said. She'll land on her feet, my father had dismissed. Jessica always does. And we'll make sure she has enough to start over somewhere far away. It's the best solution for everyone. I turned off the recordings, unable to listen to any more. my entire body felt cold. The family I had loved and trusted my entire life had not only betrayed me but had methodically planned my destruction to save my younger sister from facing consequences for her actions. When I finally made it back to my apartment that night, the hits kept coming. My phone was flooded with text messages from extended family members and friends, all expressing shock and disappointment in me. The story had already spread that I had stolen from the family company. I scrolled through social media in horror to find posts from distant cousins and family friends already condemning me, some calling me a thief, others expressing how shocked they were that I could do such a thing. The character assassination was swift and thorough. An email from Miller Financial's HR department was waiting in my inbox, scheduling a termination meeting for the following morning to discuss the circumstances of your separation from the company. They had timed everything perfectly. As the reality of my situation sank in, I felt my chest tighten and my breathing become shallow. The room seemed to spin around me as I sank to my kitchen floor, my first full-blown panic attack taking hold. I was completely alone, publicly shamed, and about to lose my job. And I had done nothing wrong. The next morning, things got even worse. When I visited my bank to withdraw cash, thinking I might need it for an emergency, I discovered all my accounts had been frozen pending an investigation. A call to check my credit report revealed extensive identity fraud, credit cards opened in my name with massive balances, loans I'd never taken out. "I'm sorry, Ms. Miller, but there's a fraud alert on your credit report," the bank representative said. "It appears to have been initiated by Robert Miller? Is that a relative?" My own father had reported me for fraud. They hadn't just cut me off, they had methodically destroyed my financial standing. The final blow came when I returned to my apartment and found a notice from the building management taped to my door. I was being evicted for violation of lease terms regarding illegal activities. They had even gotten to my landlord. I stared at the notice, the calculated nature of the betrayal becoming crystal clear. This wasn't just an emotional cutting of ties, my family had systematically dismantled every aspect of my life in less than 24 hours. That night, alone in what would soon no longer be my apartment, I hit rock bottom. I looked around at the life I had built, photos of family vacations on the walls, gifts from my parents on the shelves, a life's worth of memories and connections, all built on what I now knew was a foundation of sand. For a brief, dark moment, I considered ending it all. What was the point of fighting against such overwhelming odds? They had money, connections, and the benefit of a united front. I had nothing and no one. As I sat on my couch contemplating my options, my eyes fell on an old photo album I kept on my bookshelf. I pulled it out and flipped through it until I found what I was looking for, a picture of me and my grandmother, my father's mother, taken just weeks before she passed away when I was 19. Grandma Ruth had been different from the rest of the family, warm, genuine, and fundamentally fair. She had built the original accounting firm that my father had later expanded into Miller Financial. In the photo, she was holding my hand at my college orientation, her eyes proud. "You're the honest one, Jessica," she had told me that day. "This family needs your strength more than they know." Something shifted inside me as I looked at her face. I could almost hear her voice. "When people show you who they are, believe them the first time." My family had shown me exactly who they were. Fine. I would show them who I was too. I closed the photo album, wiped my tears, and stood up. They wanted me gone? Fine. But they would remember the day they turned me into an enemy. This wasn't over, it was just beginning. The next morning, with nowhere else to turn, I called the one person I knew might still believe in me, Diana Reed, my college roommate and still my closest friend despite our busy lives often keeping us apart. "Jessica?" Diana answered, concern in her voice. "I've been trying to reach you. There are some crazy rumors." "They're all lies," I cut in, my voice breaking. "Diana, I've lost everything. My family, my job, my apartment. I have nowhere to go." There was only the briefest pause before Diana responded, "Come to our place. Now. Pack whatever you need." You can stay as long as you want. 2 hours later, I was sitting at Diana and Michael Reed's kitchen table, pouring out the entire story while Michael made coffee and Diana listened intently, her face growing increasingly outraged. "Those absolute monsters," Diana said when I finished, reaching across the table to squeeze my hand. "I never liked your sister, but this is beyond anything I could have imagined." Michael, Diana's husband of 3 years and a cybersecurity expert, had been quietly taking notes. "This isn't just family drama, Jessica. This is fraud, identity theft, and defamation. They've committed actual crimes against you." For the first time since the family dinner, I felt a tiny spark of hope. Someone believed me. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't alone. "Our guest room is yours for as long as you need it," Diana insisted. "And Michael can help with the technical aspects of gathering evidence. I can analyze those recordings, check their authenticity, and see what other digital evidence we might recover," Michael added. "If you still have access to your work email or cloud storage, there might be more we can find." That night, after setting up in their cozy guest room, the emotional dam finally broke. Weeks of stress followed by the utter betrayal and the small kindness of true friends became too much. Diana held me while I sobbed uncontrollably, my body shaking with grief and rage. "Let it out," she whispered. "But remember, this isn't the end of your story. It's just a terrible chapter." The next day, Michael helped me recover deleted emails from my cloud backup that showed the original communications when I'd first noticed the accounting discrepancies. Diana, meanwhile, used her connections as a paralegal to set up a meeting with Eleanor Winters, a lawyer specializing in financial fraud. Eleanor's office was minimalist and impeccably organized, much like the woman herself. In her mid-50s with short silver hair and penetrating eyes, she listened to my story without interruption, occasionally making notes on a yellow legal pad. When I finished, she put down her pen and looked at me directly. "Ms. Miller, I won't sugarcoat this. You're up against a powerful family with significant resources and connections. The fact that they've moved so quickly and thoroughly suggests they've been planning this for some time." My heart sank. "So there's nothing I can do?" "I didn't say that," Eleanor replied, a hint of steel entering her voice. "I said it would be difficult. The question is, what exactly do you want? Revenge? Reconciliation? Simply to clear your name?" "I want the truth to come out," I said firmly. "I want my professional reputation restored. And yes, I want them to face consequences for what they've done." Eleanor nodded. "Then we have work to do. My retainer is $10,000. I felt the blood drain from my face. I don't have access to that kind of money right now. All my accounts are frozen." Eleanor studied me for a moment, then made a decision. "I'll take $2,000 now, which I assume you can scrape together, and we'll work out a payment plan for the rest. I don't like bullies, Ms. Miller, especially ones who abuse their positions of power within a family." Meanwhile, Michael had been working his technical magic. By the end of the week, he had recovered not only my emails but also found surveillance footage from the office showing Amber accessing financial systems she had no authorization to use. "Look at the timestamps," he pointed out, showing me the footage on his laptop. "These match exactly with when those fraudulent transfers were made." The evidence was beginning to pile up. We found credit card statements showing Amber's extravagant spending. Designer clothes, weekends in the Hamptons, jewelry that cost more than my monthly salary, all coinciding with the missing funds. Most damning of all, Michael recovered emails between my parents discussing Amber's problem months before the confrontation, proving they had known about her theft long before they decided to frame me. "They were never going to let her face consequences," I said bitterly, staring at the emails. "They were just trying to decide how to cover it up." Our break came unexpectedly. An anonymous email arrived in my personal account. "Not everyone at Miller Financial believes the lies. Park bench by the duck pond, Riverside Park, 1 p.m. tomorrow. Come alone." After discussing it with Diana, Michael, and Eleanor, I decided to go, but with precautions. Diana would watch from a distance, and I'd wear a recording device Michael provided. The next day, I arrived early and sat nervously on the designated bench. At exactly 1 p.m., an older woman with a neat gray bun and sensible shoes approached. I recognized her immediately, Linda Warren, the company's bookkeeper who had worked for Miller Financial since my grandmother's days. "Jessica," she said quietly, sitting beside me. "I don't have much time. They're watching everyone at the office closely now." Linda had been my grandmother's right-hand woman for decades before my father took over. She had taught me most of what I knew about accounting. "I never believed you would steal," she said, pulling a USB drive from her purse and slipping it to me. "I've been making copies of certain records for years, call it an old woman's insurance policy. Your grandmother always told me to watch out for you, said you were the only one with her sense of ethics." The drive contained years of financial records, including evidence that Amber's theft went back much further than I'd realized, and proof that my parents had been covering for her repeatedly. "Why are you helping me?" I asked Linda. "You could lose your job." "Ruth Miller built that company on honesty and fair dealing," Linda replied, referring to my grandmother. "What they're doing to you goes against everything she stood for. Besides," she added with a small smile, "I'm retiring next month anyway. Already gave my notice before all this happened." That night, Diana, Michael, Eleanor, and I spread all our evidence across the dining room table, creating a comprehensive map of the betrayal. The recordings, the surveillance footage, the financial records, Linda's evidence, it was all coming together. "We have enough to file a substantial counterclaim," Eleanor said, reviewing her notes. "And to approach the board of directors with evidence of widespread financial misconduct. But we need to be strategic," Michael cautioned. "They've already shown they'll go to extreme lengths to protect themselves." Diana, always the most practical, pulled out a whiteboard and began mapping the family's vulnerabilities. "Your father cares about the company's reputation above all. Your mother prioritizes her social standing. Amber can't stand public embarrassment. And Ryan seems to be the weak link, he went along with it but had reservations." "We hit them on all fronts," I said, studying the whiteboard. "Legal, financial, social, and corporate." "This won't be quick or easy," Eleanor warned. "Are you prepared for what this will mean? You may never reconcile with your family." I looked around at the three people who had stood by me when my own blood had betrayed me. These were my real allies, people who valued truth and loyalty. "They destroyed what I was," I said, my resolve hardening. "Now they'll see who I've become." With my professional reputation in tatters, finding a new job would normally have been impossible. However, Eleanor had connections at Westbrook Financial, a rival firm to Miller Financial. After reviewing my case and the evidence we'd gathered, they agreed to hire me on a temporary basis as a senior accountant. It wasn't the leadership position I'd had before, but it gave me income and a chance to rebuild my professional credibility. "This is a probationary period," Marcus Westbrook, the CEO, told me candidly. "We're taking a risk on you, Ms. Miller. Don't make us regret it." I threw myself into the work, determined to prove my value. Simultaneously, I began working with a reputation management expert Eleanor recommended. "Documentation is your best friend," said Cynthia Palmer, the specialist. "We need to establish a system for logging every piece of evidence, every interaction, every step you take to clear your name." Michael set up a secure cloud storage system where we stored copies of all our evidence, accessible only with multi-factor authentication. Diana helped me create a spreadsheet tracking every false claim made against me and the evidence disproving each one. Meanwhile, Eleanor began the legal offensive with calculated precision. First, she filed motions to unfreeze my personal accounts on the grounds that there was no legitimate legal basis for the hold. "We're not going for everything at once," she explained. "We start with reasonable requests that make them look unreasonable for fighting." Next came a formal legal notice to my family regarding the false accusations they'd spread. It didn't demand anything yet, it simply put them on notice that we had evidence contradicting their claims and were prepared to use it. Eleanor also arranged a strategic leak to a business reporter at the Financial Times about questions surrounding accounting practices at Miller Financial. The article didn't mention me by name but raised enough concerns to make investors nervous. The first sign that our strategy was working came in the form of a panicked call from Ryan. I let it go to voicemail. "Jessica, it's me," his voice sounded strained. "Look, things are getting complicated here. Dad's furious about some article. We need to talk. Privately. Please call me back." I played the message for the team during our evening strategy session. "He's the weak link," Diana observed. "He never fully bought into framing you." "It's too soon to engage," Eleanor advised. "Let them sweat a bit more. We're just getting started." Taking Eleanor's advice, we continued building pressure. She filed a legal demand for a formal retraction of the statements my parents had made to extended family members about me stealing from the company. Meanwhile, I reached out to Taylor Hammond, an ethical private investigator recommended by one of Eleanor's colleagues. Taylor specialized in financial investigations and had formerly worked for the SEC. "Your family has been busy," Taylor reported after his initial investigation. "I found evidence of offshore accounts in the Caymans and Bermuda, significant tax irregularities going back years, and a pattern of questionable client relationships that regulators would find very interesting." He provided documentation of Amber's hidden purchases, including a secret apartment in Miami that not even her fiancé knew about, and connections between my father's business and clients with troubling backgrounds. "This isn't just about clearing your name anymore," Taylor warned. "This is about exposing potentially serious financial crimes." The information gave us leverage, but also raised the stakes significantly. If we exposed everything, multiple family members could face criminal charges. On the social front, I crafted a careful response to the accusations. Rather than engaging in public mudslinging, I posted a simple statement on my professional social media. "I am aware of certain allegations regarding my professional conduct. These claims are false, and I am working with legal counsel to address them. I appreciate the support of those who have reserved judgment." Privately, I reached out to select family members who might be sympathetic: my mother's sister Aunt Carol, who had always been kind to me, and my cousin Patrick, who worked in a different industry and had no financial ties to Miller Financial. "I can't believe what they're saying about you," Aunt Carol told me when we met for coffee. "Your mother has always favored Amber, but this is beyond anything I could have imagined." Patrick was equally supportive. "Dad told me what Uncle Robert is claiming, but it doesn't add up. You've always been the responsible one." Having even these small footholds in the family gave me hope that not everyone had abandoned me. A significant breakthrough came when I attended the annual Finance Industry Excellence Awards. I hadn't planned to go, but Diana insisted. "Show your face. Hold your head high. Let them see you're not hiding." Walking into that ballroom was one of the hardest things I'd ever done. I could feel eyes on me, hear the whispers. But I kept my chin up and back straight as I made my way through the crowd. It was there that Walter Kingsley, my father's longtime business partner, approached me at the bar. "Jessica," he said quietly, "I've known your family for 30 years. This situation doesn't add up." "It's not what they're claiming," I replied carefully. Walter nodded slightly. "Ruth was my dear friend. She always said you were the one who inherited her integrity. Some of us haven't forgotten that." He slipped me his card with a private number written on the back. "When the time comes, call me." As I built this alternative support network, my family made their first direct countermove. A cease and desist letter arrived from their attorneys, threatening legal action if I continued to make false statements impugning the reputation of the Miller family and Miller Financial Services. That evening, my father called. Against Eleanor's advice, I answered. "This has gone far enough," he said, his voice cold. "Drop whatever you think you're doing, take the settlement offer we'll send over, and disappear. Otherwise, you'll regret it." "Is that a threat?" I asked, recording the call as Michael had shown me. "It's a promise," my father replied before hanging up. The most surprising contact came from Jake, Amber's fiancé. He texted asking to meet privately, away from family eyes. "I'm starting to see things that don't make sense," he admitted when we met at a quiet coffee shop outside the city. "Amber's spending, it doesn't match what I know about her income. And some of her reactions when I ask questions. I'm having doubts, Jessica." I was careful not to reveal too much, but I could tell Jake was genuinely troubled. Another small crack in my family's united front. That night, as I reported back to my allies, I felt a surge of determination. "They threw the first punch thinking I'd never get up," I told them. "Now it's my turn." With our evidence organized and our strategy in place, it was time to increase the pressure. Eleanor helped me prepare a detailed package of information for select members of Miller Financial's board of directors. Those not directly related to my family and with reputations for ethical business practices. "We're not accusing anyone of anything yet," Eleanor explained as we reviewed the materials. "We're simply raising concerns about accounting irregularities that might expose the company to regulatory scrutiny." Within 48 hours of delivering those packages, I received a call from Walter Kingsley, who served as chairman of the board. "There's an emergency board meeting tomorrow," he informed me. "Your father is in a panic." "What exactly did you send to my colleagues?" "Just enough to raise the right questions," I replied. Simultaneously, Michael helped me file an anonymous whistleblower complaint with the SEC, detailing the evidence of financial misconduct we had gathered. We were careful to focus on the company's actions rather than making it seem like a personal vendetta. The next salvo came from an unexpected direction. A leading industry publication ran a story titled "Accounting Concerns Plague Miller Financial," which caused the company's stock to drop nearly 8% in a single day. "I didn't plant that story," I told my team, confused by the timing. "I did," Taylor admitted. "I have contacts in financial journalism. Nothing in that article is untrue or unsubstantiated. The market is simply responding to facts." Diana monitored social media and reported that business partners were beginning to distance themselves from Miller Financial. "Two major clients have announced they're reviewing their relationship with the firm," she said. "Your father's carefully built reputation is starting to crack." On the social front, I continued my strategic campaign to reclaim my narrative. I had documented every false claim made against me and shared the truth selectively with key family friends. Cynthia, my reputation management expert, had advised a targeted approach: don't try to convince everyone at once. Focus on respected individuals whose opinions carry weight in your social circle. I started with Martha Caldwell, my mother's oldest friend and the unofficial social arbiter of their country club set. Over lunch, I showed her evidence of my innocence and Amber's guilt. "Catherine has always indulged that girl," Martha said, shaking her head. "But I never thought she'd go this far to protect her." The effects rippled outward. Within days, I heard that Amber's maid of honor, her best friend since childhood, had withdrawn from the wedding party, citing personal concerns. Extended family members began reaching out to me privately, expressing doubts about the story my parents had spread. My cousin Rebecca, who had initially posted a scathing condemnation of me on social media, called in tears to apologize. "Uncle Robert was so convincing," she said. "But then I started hearing other things, and the story just didn't add up." The most satisfying moment came when my mother's sister Carol called to tell me that my mother had been asked to step down temporarily from the board of the children's charity she had chaired for a decade. "They're concerned about the appearance of impropriety," Carol reported, barely concealing her satisfaction. My mother had always treated her sister as slightly inferior, and Carol wasn't above enjoying a bit of schadenfreude. A real turning point came when I received an invitation to my cousin Daniel's wedding, an invitation my mother had apparently tried to block. "Aunt Catherine called and said you shouldn't be included because you'd make people uncomfortable," Daniel told me when I called to confirm I would attend. That's when I knew something was off. "You've never made anyone uncomfortable in your life, Jessica." Appearing at that wedding was a strategic move. I wore a simple but elegant dress, greeted everyone warmly, and made no mention of the family drama. The contrast between my dignified behavior and my parents' frantic attempts to control the narrative spoke volumes. On the legal front, Eleanor continued to apply steady pressure. The judge ruled in our favor regarding my frozen accounts, forcing the bank to release my funds. It was a small victory, but an important one, both practically and symbolically. Eleanor then filed a detailed counterclaim with substantial evidence, formally accusing my family of defamation, fraud, and malicious prosecution. The filing included affidavits from former colleagues at Miller Financial attesting to my professional integrity and performance. The deposition process began, with Eleanor systematically questioning company employees about the accounting practices and decision-making hierarchy. Each deposition revealed more inconsistencies in my family's version of events. "People are talking," Taylor reported after speaking with his contacts within the industry. The narrative is shifting from Jessica Miller, disgraced accountant, to Jessica Miller, potential whistleblower. The discovery process uncovered even more than we had anticipated, including evidence that my father had used company funds for personal expenses and that my mother had directed company donations to charities in exchange for board positions and social advancement. About 6 weeks into our campaign, the first settlement offer arrived. It was insultingly small, a fraction of the damage they had caused, and required me to sign a non-disclosure agreement about the entire situation. "They still think this is just about money," Eleanor said, setting the offer aside. "They don't understand what's really at stake for you." "Or for them," I added. The most unexpected development came when Ryan reached out again, this time requesting a meeting through Eleanor rather than contacting me directly, a sign he was taking the situation seriously. We agreed to meet at a neutral location, a quiet cafe in a neighboring town where we were unlikely to be recognized. I arrived early, with Diana positioned at a nearby table as backup. Ryan looked terrible, dark circles under his eyes, hair uncombed, wedding ring conspicuously absent. "Sarah's taken the boys to her parents," he said, noticing my glance at his bare finger. "She says she can't be around the family until this is resolved." "She always liked you." "What do you want, Ryan?" I asked, keeping my voice neutral. He took a deep breath. "I'm sorry, Jess. I should have stopped it. I knew it was wrong, but I was a coward." "Yes, you were," I agreed, not making it easier for him. "I have evidence," he said, sliding a thumb drive across the table. Recordings of conversations, copies of the original documents before they were altered, text messages between Mom, Dad, and Amber planning the whole thing. I've been documenting everything since the beginning, telling myself it was just insurance, but really, I think I always knew I'd have to make this right eventually. "Why now?" I asked, not touching the drive yet. "They're threatening Sarah now," he said, his voice breaking. "Saying she needs to come back and present a united front, or they'll make trouble for her parents' business." That's when I realized, this is never going to stop. They'll keep destroying people to protect themselves and Amber. I studied my brother's face, looking for any sign of deception. Finding none, I finally picked up the drive. "If I use this," I warned him, "there's no going back. Mom and Dad could face serious consequences. Amber too." Ryan nodded slowly. "I know. But the truth is, if they're willing to do this to you, their own daughter, and now threaten Sarah and her family, they deserve whatever comes next." As I left the cafe, Diana fell into step beside me. "Well?" she asked. I held up the thumb drive. "The truth doesn't stay buried forever," I said. And neither did I. Just as our momentum was building, my family launched a counteroffensive. They hired William Blackwood, a notoriously aggressive attorney known for his scorched-earth tactics and political connections. "This isn't good," Eleanor warned when she heard the news. "Blackwood plays dirty. He'll try to make this about destroying you rather than defending them." She was right. Within days, a new narrative began circulating in industry circles, that I had a gambling problem and had stolen from the company to cover my debts. The rumor was completely fabricated but crafted to be just plausible enough that people might believe it. They're trying to provide an alternative explanation for why you might have stolen money, Eleanor explained. It doesn't matter that there's no evidence, they just need to create doubt about your motives. The smear campaign intensified, with anonymous sources close to the Miller family giving interviews to business publications about my supposed addiction. Old college photos of me at a casino during a weekend trip to Atlantic City suddenly surfaced online, presented as evidence of a long-standing problem. The pressure reached my new workplace when Marcus Westbrook called me into his office, looking uncomfortable. "Jessica, we've received some concerning information about your past," he began. "Let me guess, claims that I have a gambling addiction?" I said wearily. Marcus looked surprised. "You know about this?" "It's completely fabricated," I assured him. "Part of my family's campaign to discredit me. I've never even had so much as a lottery ticket. You can check my bank records, credit history, anything you want." Marcus seemed relieved but remained cautious. "I believe you, but the board is concerned about the negative publicity. We're going to have to put you on paid leave until this is resolved." Just like that, I was unemployed again. The speed with which my family could destroy opportunities was breathtaking. But the attacks weren't limited to my professional life. That weekend, Diana and Michael's home was broken into while we were all out to dinner. The intruders didn't take any valuables but clearly searched through my belongings in the guest room. Most concerning, the filing cabinet where we kept hard copies of our evidence had been forced open, though thankfully we kept the most important documents in a safe deposit box. "This wasn't a random burglary," Michael said as the police took statements. "This was a message." The intimidation escalated. Linda received a hand-delivered package containing photographs of her grandchildren at their school playground, with no note, just the photos. The message was clear. Taylor reported being followed by a black SUV with tinted windows for several days. "They're trying to scare us off," he said during our next strategy meeting. "This is actually a good sign, it means we're getting to them." Eleanor faced professional challenges too. She received a call from a prominent client threatening to pull their business if she continued representing me. Then a judge she'd never appeared before was assigned to our case, one with known connections to my father's social circle. "This is highly irregular," Eleanor said, reviewing the case reassignment notice. "Judge Carlton has no connection to financial law. His specialty is family court." Within days, Judge Carlton held a hearing on a motion filed by Blackwood to dismiss our entire case. During the hearing, it became clear the judge had already made up his mind. He repeatedly interrupted Eleanor while giving Blackwood free rein to make inflammatory statements. "Ms. Miller's claims are clearly the desperate actions of a disgruntled former employee seeking revenge against her family for holding her accountable," Blackwood argued. "The evidence she presents is circumstantial at best, fabricated at worst." Judge Carlton nodded along, then looked at Eleanor with thinly veiled contempt. "I find the plaintiff's arguments unconvincing and potentially frivolous. I'm dismissing the defamation claims and staying all other aspects of the case pending further review." Outside the courthouse, Eleanor was furious. That was a travesty. Carlton didn't even bother to hide his bias. "We'll appeal, of course, but that will take time, which is exactly what they want." More bad news followed. The evidence Ryan had provided was being challenged on technicalities, claims that the recordings had been edited or obtained illegally, arguments that the documents weren't properly authenticated. "They're not trying to win on the merits," Eleanor explained. "They're trying to bog us down in procedural challenges until we run out of resources or will to continue." The setbacks took their toll. For the first time since I'd begun fighting back, I felt my confidence wavering. What if they were too powerful? What if justice wasn't possible against opponents with so many advantages? One evening, after particularly difficult news about our case being delayed again, I broke down. "Maybe I should just take whatever settlement they offer," I said to Diana as we sat in her kitchen. "Move away, start over somewhere new. This is consuming my entire life." Diana slammed her hand on the table, startling me. "That is exactly what they want you to think, Jessica. They're trying to exhaust you into giving up. The moment you accept defeat is the moment they win permanently. But they have unlimited resources, connections everywhere. We keep hitting wall after wall. So we find a different path, Diana insisted. We've been playing their game, in their arena. Maybe it's time to change the rules. Her words sparked something in me. We had been fighting a conventional battle against opponents who controlled the conventional channels. Perhaps it was time for a different approach entirely. I called an emergency strategy meeting with the entire team: Eleanor, Diana, Michael, Taylor, Linda, and now Ryan, who had officially joined our side. Everything we've tried has been countered, I began. They're using their connections to block us in court, their money to spread lies, and their influence to isolate us. We need to rethink our entire strategy. Michael was the first to offer a suggestion. We've been too cautious with the media. Maybe it's time to take this story public in a bigger way. Eleanor agreed. We've been fighting in the shadows, which gives them control of the narrative. A more public approach would force them to respond openly. I have contacts in investigative journalism, Taylor added. Real journalists, not the business press that your father can influence. People who specialize in exposing corporate malfeasance. Ryan, who had been quiet until now, finally spoke up. I know where all the bodies are buried, figuratively speaking. I can provide information on clients, deals, and practices going back years. Things even Jessica doesn't know about. Eleanor tapped her pen thoughtfully against her legal pad. We should also consider bringing in additional legal firepower. I have a colleague who specializes in SEC whistleblower cases. With what we know now, this could potentially qualify. As the night wore on, a new plan emerged, bolder, more public, and with a potential for much greater impact than our previous approach. If conventional methods had failed us, we would use the power of public opinion and regulatory oversight instead. If this doesn't work, I said as the meeting concluded, we still have one final option. What's that? Diana asked. I smiled grimly. I call it the nuclear option. If they want to destroy my life, I'm prepared to destroy everything they value in return. But let's hope it doesn't come to that. As everyone departed, Diana lingered behind. Are you sure about this new direction? It's much riskier. They think I'm beaten, I replied. That's exactly what we need them to believe. The pivot in our strategy began with a carefully selected journalist. Taylor introduced me to Caroline Reed, an investigative reporter with a national news magazine known for exposing corporate wrongdoing. Unlike the business press that depended on access to companies like Miller Financial, Caroline had built her career on challenging powerful interests. I need to verify everything independently, she warned during our first meeting. I can't just publish your accusations without substantiation. I wouldn't expect you to, I replied, providing her with a comprehensive documentation package, financial records, the audio recordings, affidavits from former colleagues, and a detailed timeline of events. This will take time to investigate properly, Caroline said, impressed by the organization of our materials. But if everything checks out, it's a hell of a story. While Caroline worked, we lined up strategic interviews with witnesses willing to go on record. Linda agreed to speak about the company's financial practices during my grandmother's era compared to now. Former colleagues attested to my professional integrity. Even Jake, who had broken off his engagement to Amber after discovering more of her deceptions, agreed to provide a statement about her spending habits. After 6 weeks of intensive investigation, Caroline was ready. She called to give me a heads up, the piece runs tomorrow. It's comprehensive: financial fraud, family betrayal, corporate corruption. Your parents have declined to comment despite multiple opportunities. The article, titled Blood Money: How Miller Financial Sacrificed Truth for Family Loyalty, hit like a bombshell. Caroline had meticulously built the case, presenting not just my story but placing it within a larger pattern of ethical concerns at the company. Most damaging were the audio recordings of my family plotting against me, which Caroline had independently verified as authentic. The impact was immediate and far-reaching. Within hours, major clients of Miller Financial released statements expressing concern and announcing reviews of their relationship with the firm. The company's stock dropped 15% by closing bell. Financial news networks picked up the story, with commentators dissecting the implications for investor confidence. Business ethics professors were quoted condemning the company's actions. Social media erupted with discussions about corporate governance and family dynamics in business. My parents attempted damage control, releasing a statement calling the article a sensationalized account based on misleading information provided by a disgruntled former employee. But their response seemed weak compared to the detailed evidence presented. The next blow came when the SEC announced it was opening a formal investigation into Miller Financial's accounting practices. This was followed by an emergency board meeting where, according to Walter Kingsley, my father faced intense questioning about his leadership decisions. The board is furious, Walter reported. Not just about the potential financial irregularities, but about being kept in the dark. Several members have suggested your father take a leave of absence while this is sorted out. The pressure extended beyond business into their social world. My mother's carefully cultivated society friends began distancing themselves, unwilling to be associated with the growing scandal. Invitations to key social events mysteriously failed to arrive. The charity board she sat on requested she take a temporary leave to avoid controversy. Perhaps most satisfying was the effect on Amber. Her carefully constructed image as the perfect daughter, heading toward a picture-perfect society wedding, collapsed overnight. Jake had already ended their engagement, but now former friends publicly questioned their association with her. The reality of facing actual consequences for her actions seemed to trigger a meltdown. She was photographed screaming at waiting reporters outside her apartment building, images that quickly went viral. Ryan, who had moved his family to Connecticut to distance them from this situation, reported that the extended family was now openly questioning my parents' version of events. "Thanksgiving is canceled this year," he said with grim humor. "No one wants to sit at a table with them." The decisive moment came when my father's attorney reached out to Eleanor requesting an emergency settlement meeting. "They're feeling the heat," Eleanor said. "They want this to go away quickly." We agreed to the meeting but insisted it take place on neutral ground. A conference room at Eleanor's law firm rather than at Miller Financial offices. I also insisted that my parents be present, not just their lawyers. The day of the meeting, I arrived early with my complete team: Eleanor, Diana, Michael, Taylor, Linda, and Ryan. We arranged the conference room strategically, with evidence binders stacked prominently on the table, my supporters seated together presenting a united front. When my parents entered, accompanied by William Blackwood and 2 junior attorneys, I was struck by how diminished they appeared. My father, always impeccably groomed and commanding, looked haggard and older. My mother, whose perfect appearance had been her armor, seemed brittle and tense. They hesitated when they saw our numbers, clearly having expected to face only Eleanor and me. Blackwood attempted to object to having so many people present, but Eleanor smoothly countered that everyone in the room had signed confidentiality agreements and was essential to the discussion. As we all took our seats, the air thick with tension, my father attempted to seize control of the situation. "Let's get to the point," he said brusquely. "We're prepared to make a generous offer to resolve this unfortunate situation." Before we discuss numbers, I replied calmly, "I have non-negotiable conditions that need to be addressed." I slid a document across the table outlining my terms. 1. A full public apology and retraction of all accusations against me. 2. Financial compensation for damages to my career and reputation. 3. Restructuring of Miller Financial with independent oversight. 4. My reinstatement on the board of directors, honoring my grandmother's legacy. "This is absurd," my father sputtered, pushing the paper away. "You're in no position to make demands." "On the contrary," Eleanor interjected smoothly. "Your company's stock has fallen 30% since this scandal broke. The SEC investigation is just beginning. Board members are questioning your leadership. I'd say we're in an excellent position to make demands." "This could all go away," I added. "The public attention, the regulatory scrutiny, the social embarrassment. Or it could get much worse. "Are you threatening us?" my mother asked, speaking for the first time. "I'm offering a path forward that doesn't end with Miller Financial in ruins and both of you potentially facing criminal charges," I replied evenly. "I call that an opportunity, not a threat." "We built this company," my father insisted. "You can't just walk in and dictate terms." "Grandmother built this company," I corrected him. "You expanded it. There's a difference. And she would be ashamed of what you've done in her name." At the mention of my grandmother, my mother's composure finally cracked. "You have no right to speak for Ruth," she said, her voice rising. "You were always her favorite, always the special one. Even after she died, we had to hear about how Jessica would have done things differently, how Jessica had Ruth's integrity. As if the rest of us were just greedy opportunists." The outburst revealed more than she intended, the long-simmering resentment, the petty jealousy that had possibly fueled their willingness to sacrifice me. My father placed a restraining hand on her arm, but the damage was done. The mask had slipped, revealing the ugly truth beneath their polished exterior. Blackwood, sensing the deterioration of his client's position, stepped in. "Perhaps we should take a brief recess to consider the terms more carefully," he suggested, clearly wanting to get my parents out of the room before they said anything more damaging. "No need," my father said, regaining his composure. "I've heard enough." He turned to me, eyes cold. "You want to destroy everything we've built? Fine. But remember, you're a Miller too. Whatever happens to this family, to this company, is on your conscience." "My conscience is clear," I replied. "Can you say the same?" After a tense silence, Blackwood sighed heavily. "Ms. Winters, I believe we can work within the framework your client has proposed, with some modifications to the details." As the lawyers began to negotiate specifics, I felt a strange sense of calm wash over me. This wasn't just about winning or revenge, it was about truth finally prevailing over lies, justice over power. My father refused to look at me for the remainder of the meeting, but as they were leaving, my mother paused at the door. "I hope it was worth it," she said bitterly. "Tearing apart your own family." "You did that," I replied quietly. "When you decided I was disposable." She had no answer for that, turning away and following my father out. Diana squeezed my hand under the table. "You did it," she whispered. I smiled slightly, thinking of my grandmother's words, "You thought you were burying me. You never realized you were planting a seed." The formal statement from Miller Financial was released on a Tuesday morning, carefully worded by lawyers but unmistakable in its message. Jessica Miller had been wrongfully accused. The company regretted the misunderstanding and acknowledged my significant contributions and unwavering integrity. Reading between the lines, it was as close to an admission of guilt as a corporate entity could make. 2 days later, I held a small press conference, professionally addressing this situation without revealing the full extent of the family drama. Dressed in a tailored navy suit that projected confidence and competence, I spoke briefly about my commitment to ethical financial practices and my plans to honor my grandmother's legacy. While recent events have been challenging, I told the assembled reporters, I believe in looking forward rather than dwelling on the past. I'm grateful for the opportunity to continue my professional journey with my reputation intact. The response was overwhelmingly positive. Industry colleagues reached out with support and job offers. Social media commentary praised my grace under pressure. Several financial publications ran profiles highlighting my principled stand against corporate misconduct, even at great personal cost. With the settlement funds, I established my own financial consulting firm, Miller Integrity Financial, deliberately invoking both my family name and the principle I had fought for. The irony wasn't lost on anyone in the industry. Former clients from Miller Financial began seeking my services, impressed by my demonstrated commitment to ethical practices. My reputation as a person of integrity in an industry often lacking it became my greatest asset. Linda joined me as a senior advisor, bringing her decades of experience and institutional knowledge. "Your grandmother would be so proud," she told me on our first official day of business. This is what she always hoped for. Someone who understood that success without ethics is just failure in disguise. Our first major contract came from a surprising source, Walter Kingsley, who had left Miller Financial to start his own investment firm. "I want to sleep well at night knowing my client's money is being handled properly," he said as we signed the agreement. "After everything that happened, I trust you more than anyone else in this business." The success was deeply satisfying, but the personal journey of healing proved more complicated. I purchased a new home in a quiet neighborhood, establishing a place that was truly mine, with no connections to my past. The settlement had made me financially secure, but the emotional wounds required more than money to heal. I continued regular therapy sessions, initially focused on processing the trauma of betrayal, gradually shifting toward building a future rather than dissecting the past. "You've accomplished something remarkable," my therapist observed during one session. "Many people never recover from family betrayal of this magnitude. You've not only survived but transformed the experience into something constructive." I had help, I acknowledged, thinking of the loyal friends who had become my chosen family. Those relationships deepened as we moved beyond crisis mode. Diana and Michael's guest room was no longer my emergency housing, but their home remained my most frequent dinner destination. Taylor and Eleanor, originally hired professionals, became trusted friends. We celebrated birthdays and holidays together, building new traditions to replace the family gatherings I had lost. My relationship with Ryan evolved cautiously. He had taken significant risks to help me, but the memory of his initial compliance with our parents' plan created a complicated dynamic. We spoke regularly on the phone, and I visited Connecticut occasionally to see my nieces, but true trust would take time to rebuild. 6 months after the settlement, a letter arrived from Margaret Collins, my grandmother's oldest friend who had moved to Arizona years ago. "Ruth always told me you were the one who truly understood what she built and why," she wrote. "I've been following your journey from afar and wanted you to know how proud she would be, not just of your professional integrity, but of your courage in standing up for yourself when it would have been easier to walk away." The letter brought me to tears, providing validation from someone who had known my grandmother intimately. It felt like receiving her blessing from beyond. 1 year after the family dinner that had changed everything, I hosted a small gathering at my new home for the people who had stood by me through the darkest times. The dining table, deliberately round, with no head seat to symbolize equality, was set with care, good food, and bottles of champagne. After dinner, I raised my glass for a toast. A year ago, I lost what I thought was everything: family, career, reputation, security. What I didn't realize then was that I was about to discover what truly matters. Each of you showed me what real loyalty looks like, what genuine support feels like. You became the family I chose rather than the one I was born into. I presented each person with a small, meaningful gift: a vintage accounting ledger for Linda that had belonged to my grandmother, a rare first-edition book on law ethics for Eleanor, custom security software for Michael, a classic detective novel for Taylor, and for Diana, a friendship bracelet that matched one I wore myself. Sometimes the worst moments of our lives become turning points toward something better, I continued. Being cast out as a stranger gave me the opportunity to discover who I really am when everything familiar is stripped away. And what I found was stronger, more resilient, and ultimately happier than I was before. Looking around the table at these people who had fought alongside me, I felt a profound sense of peace. The old family photo albums were packed away in storage, replaced by new memories captured in frames throughout my home: Diana and me hiking, the whole group at a baseball game, Linda teaching me to make her famous apple pie. The wound of betrayal would always be part of my story, but it no longer defined me. Instead, it had become the catalyst for building something more authentic than what I had lost: relationships based on genuine care rather than obligation, success founded on integrity rather than appearance, and a life that honored my grandmother's true legacy. The company that bore my family name continued without me, diminished in reputation but still functioning. My parents had relocated to Florida, retreating from the social circles where they had once reigned. Amber had supposedly entered a rehabilitation program for exhaustion and stress, according to carefully planted stories in society pages. The collapse of their carefully constructed facade had cost them dearly, but I took no pleasure in their downfall. Justice had been my goal, not destruction. In the end, they had been architects of their own fate, just as I had become the creator of my new beginning. Looking back at that family dinner a year later, I realized that when they told me to consider myself a stranger, they had unknowingly given me the greatest gift, the freedom to discover who I truly was apart from their expectations and manipulations. As the evening wound down, my guests lingering over dessert and conversation, I silently thanked my younger self for having the courage to fight rather than surrender. Some families are given, but others are found. I had lost one but gained another, and in that exchange, discovered the true meaning of belonging. I hope my story inspires you to stand up for yourself, even when it feels like you're fighting alone. Have you ever had to rebuild after a betrayal? What helped you through it? Let me know in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share with someone who might need to hear that it's possible to rise stronger after being knocked down. Thank you for joining me on this journey, and remember, sometimes being cast out is just the beginning of finding your way home to yourself.